to be human is to be creative. It's part of our
Mm.
birthright as humans to be creative. It's not only artists or designers who are
Right.
creative. Between 66%
Mm.
to 71% of knowledge workers
Wow.
are reporting burnout, and there is a business cost to burnout. $300 billion cost to US businesses is a pretty staggering number. In my view, we're actually in the
Mm.
middle of a human revolution because the technology is a tool, and if we play our cards right, we have the
Mhm.
opportunity to amplify what makes us uniquely human in the midst of all
Yeah.
this technology.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Stephanie Marie, and I'm on a mission to spread hope, sharing people's stories to encourage, inspire, and empower you. Today, I am so excited to welcome Dr. Natalie Nixon, who's a top rated global speaker and award winning author with her most recent book called Move, Think, Rest Redefining Productivity and Our Relationship with Time, which Mel Robbins refers to as a life changing operating system for sustainable success. She's a 4 times TEDx speaker and is known as the creativity whisperer to the C suite, who helps executive leaders unlock creativity's ROI for inspired business results. As CEO of Figure Eight Thinking, she's a leading creativity strategist, teaching teams like Microsoft, Meta, and Salesforce how to work with more imagination and intention, especially in moments of change, ambiguity, or burnout. Natalie brings powerful and timely lessons to us today about leveraging and infusing creativity into all areas of your life: business, your job search, well being, leadership, you name it. So, without further ado, let's begin. Hello, Natalie. Thank you so much for joining. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm really excited to talk about your work. Something that I was thinking about is when we hear the word creativity, many people have a lot of misconceptions about what creativity is. They think you have it or you don't, really. You're born with it. It's just synonymous with art. So I'm really excited to talk about your work and creativity and fusing it into all areas of our life. I'd love to begin by asking you, can you walk us through your journey and how that led you to where you are today? How did you get into the study of innovation and creativity?
Well, I have a really diverse background. I have a background in cultural anthropology. I also worked in the fashion industry. I worked for a division of the
Oh,
limited brands and global sourcing. I started my own hat design business before I even got into global
really?
sourcing. And I was really intrigued with the creative side of business
Hmm.
and those forays, just to be able to go from an idea and a concept to something that's tangible that people are interacting with, that adds value to their lives.
Right.
I was a professor for 16 years. In the first 10 years,
Wow.
I taught in the fashion management department at Thomas Jefferson University. And then for the last 6 years, I was the founding director of a strategic design MBA program. And so the way that I ended up launching that strategic design MBA program was an outgrowth of my decision to earn a PhD in the field of design management. And I
Wow.
earned that PhD while working full time in 4 years from the University of Westminster in London. And that experience really exposed me to the breadth of the world and
Mm.
work in human centered innovation. And so, for example, in the United States, one of the companies that is most well known for human centered innovation work is
Mhm.
IDEO. But most of the major strategic management consultancies today now have acquired companies with those specializations in human centered innovation, design thinking, because they realize it's highly complementary to the more traditional ways to go about strategy and innovation. I started my business really as a side hustle. I was an associate professor. I had founded the Strategic Design MBA program, and I was invited to give a TEDx Philadelphia talk in 2014. And in that talk, I was proclaiming that the future of work is jazz, and here is
Mm.
why and how. And
Mhm.
that talk really led to innovations to help companies and teams build these more improvisational systems, because it's my
Mhm.
perspective the most innovative companies are improvisational in nature. They
Mm.
don't stick to rigid rules, and they know how to ebb and flow. And that all those invitations led me to decide to start this LLC called Figure Eight Thinking,
Mm.
which at the time was totally a side hustle. I was a full-time professor, and these were nice engagements, so small consultancy projects, facilitation, speaking. But after
Mm.
about a year of that, I realized I was having more fun with my side hustle. And after a lot of deliberations and going back and forth, I finally decided, you know what, I'm going to make a try of building this business fully. I
Wow.
loved teaching. I loved the work that I was doing in higher ed. And I also saw an opportunity to apply my skills and my talents in new
Mm.
ways. So that's essentially how I started it. I really was able to converge my very diverse background by always being open to trying new things.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love how you bring everything, even fashion still. You have like an amazing taste in fashion. And so I feel like you bring everything together, all of your skills. And so it's amazing. That's awesome. And what I'm curious, what inspired the name Figure Eight? I like that.
Figure eight and thinking is an important part of it.
Mm,
I am a nerd and I love to think through things. And I also
me
believe
too.
that everything starts with our mental model, how we're thinking about things, and that
Mm,
shifts behaviors, which then shift
yeah.
outcomes and culture. Figure eight is a very interesting shape. To me, it really brings to mind the iterative process of creating and innovating. It's about diverging and thinking really big and then coming back
Mm,
to revisit an idea and converging and distilling them, broadening out again. There's also an
mm,
infinite number of ways to be creative. There are an infinite number of ways to be
mm.
innovative. So for all those reasons, that's why I decided to name my business Figure Eight
Yeah.
Thinking.
Yeah, this is amazing. I grew up being very creative in the artistic sense. So to learn that, you can actually apply this into business, into leadership, in your job, and beyond. I mean, I think that this is just incredible and so needed in today's time. And we're going to get into that, why it's so needed. I mean, you've been talking about creativity long even before the emergence of AI, but this is especially important now. And so a big question on everyone's mind really is AI going to take our jobs? People are panicking about AI, there's burnout happening. And so I really want to talk about applying what you're teaching to people in this era of AI, because I think it's really rattling a lot of people. It's very new to all of us, and so I really want to talk about that.
Yes, AI is definitely rattling a lot of people. I think that's a
Mm,
good way to describe it. And there seem to be a lot of dystopian views of the future,
mm,
which could come to be. But what I caution people to remember is that we have agency in this process. We have agency to ask for transparency, to understand that at the end of the day, these are tools and the code
mhm.
that's being designed is only as good as the questions that the coders are
Right.
asking. It's only as good, and our interaction with the AI is only as good as the questions that we ask. So, what I think is
Mm,
really key to remember is that we are actually in the midst of an imagination era. That
mm,
while we think this is a tech revolution, in my view, we're actually in
mm,
the middle of a human revolution because the technology is a tool. And if we play our cards right, we have the
mhm.
opportunity to amplify what makes us uniquely human in the midst of all this
Yeah.
technology. At the end of the day, the AI, the robotics, the automation help us to do tasks very
Mm,
quickly. And so then we have to ask, well, so what? Because of that, and now what? Well, the and now what to me is there are opportunities for spaciousness, for critical thinking, for eyeball to eyeball human conversations. And right now we're a bit obsessive and
mhm.
infatuated and have a kind of a copy paste approach to a FOMO and just keeping up
Right.
with everything else without really thinking through what's really essential and what sort of organizations could we build where yes there's AI that helps us to do our work more quickly, but also how do you become the organization that can attract and retain the best talent because you've actually figured out how to build creative capacity alongside this technology. So
Mm,
that is what I really push people to work through, and it's not an easy answer, but I have some thoughts about it, and some of the things
yeah.
I've written about in my book Move Think Rest. There's a second edition of my first book, The Creativity Leap. It comes out on June
Mhm.
30th, 2026. And there's a new
Wow.
chapter all about what creativity looks like in a time of AI.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And what I love how you said is how it's almost like exposing what we need. We need to get back to basics. And so, people are thinking, "Oh, we need to hyper focus on AI," which again, we do need to learn this and we do need to be updated about it. But also, I think it's at the root, it's getting at like we need to get back to basics, imagination, creativity, connection, empathy, all of these things. And so that's amazing. You talk about like the I in AI. I thought that was interesting. You have done speeches on that, and so that's a great focus as well.
Yes. And I call it the new I in AI, and
Mm.
not
Oh.
only focusing on the intelligence.
Mhm.
The new I in AI is under the umbrella of imagination, which is about
Yes.
inquiry and improvisation and intuition. These
Mm,
are all of the
mm,
elements and drivers that we can bring to for as humans that can ensure that we don't die slow death at work, that will ensure that the technology actually does amplify what makes us uniquely human.
And there's the most recent Forbes study had made a shocking claim, and maybe even from the time this was last year, it said that 66% of employees are experiencing burnout. Probably the number is even beyond that at this point, but probably definitely more. Burnout comes into this topic as well, and so I'm very curious about your take on burnout, and also really how your work is helping us to either prevent burnout or recover from burnout, because we're hearing this just a lot more now.
Yeah, we are. The
Yeah.
statistics, the data show that burnout is anywhere between 66%
Mm.
to 71% of knowledge workers
Wow.
are reporting burnout. And there is a business cost to burnout because
Mm.
when there's burnout, there's more attrition, there's knowledge transfer as
Right.
people quietly quit.
Mm.
Or higher insurance costs associated with burnout that are costs to a business. And
Mhm.
there's lower productivity when there's burnout.
Mm.
So yes, it is a wellness issue. It is also
Right.
a business issue. So $300 billion cost to US businesses is a pretty staggering number. And if
Mm.
that stops people in their tracks to try to create working environments that don't just foster productivity theater,
Right.
but are really ensuring that there are more humane ways for people to approach work, whether they're working in a Amazon warehouse
Mm.
or they are a white collar knowledge worker.
Mhm.
It's really important to make sure that we are allowing people to move, to think, and to rest, of what I call
Mm.
motor or MTR. And movement it could be everything from having a standing desk to making sure that
Mm.
there's an opportunity not just have a video call or meeting, but to do the call on audio only and you can walk while you're talking, or in
Mm.
person walking and talking, understanding the science and physiology about how our best work gets done in brain health and how the spinal
Mm.
cord is an extension of the brain. And so when we are cramped up over our desks for more than
Right.
really 40 to 45 minutes, we're restricting blood flow to the brain, which means we're restricting oxygen, which means we're actually not doing our best thinking. The thought
Wow.
piece of the motor framework is really about making sure that we have time for what I call backcasting, which is reflection and
Mhm.
memory. And why do we think the way we think about XYZ? That's metacognition, but also forecasting, which is about curiosity and
Mm.
inspiration and wonderment, right? And awe. Those two dimensions of thinking. Backcasting and forecasting requires to slow down, and that actually leads to sharper cognitive, clearer thinking.
Mm.
And then the rest piece is really about what I call intermittent rest, making
Mm.
sure that there are breaks during the day. What's interesting about the rest is that the break could be a movement break, the break could be a daydream break, the break could be making sure that if you need to wake up earlier for
Mm.
work and you can clock off sooner so you can read a good work of fiction. Because every time we can take a pause away from the uh, work that requires that frontal neocortex focus of the brain, you're
Mm.
allowing the default mode network of the brain to take over,
Wow.
catalyzes different neural synapses, which is actually where you get the connection between new ideas, which is where the
Right.
innovation happens. So it feels counterintuitive to a lot of people that they should step away, that they should make sure that they're pausing, that they
Mm.
should make sure that they are designing in rest in a very strategic way as an individual and as a team so that they can do their best work. But it really is true, and it's really important to do.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. I've done episodes on brain health. My background's in psychology, and so I love learning about that. The science of it. I'm also a nerd where I like learning
Awesome.
about that side of it. It's awesome. That's amazing. I didn't know the fact that you said after 45 minutes of sitting.
That
Wow,
yes,
that's
I
amazing.
learned that through the work of Dr. John Medina. He's a neuroscientist. He's written a series of books called Brain Rules. And
Wow.
his research shows that we actually should not be seated for longer than 35, 45-minute max increments of time.
Wow.
And then we should be getting up, moving, And maybe it's only for 60 seconds. Ideally, it's like
Mhm.
for 5, 15 minutes and then returning to the work at hand. But we're not designed to be sedentary. We're designed
Right.
to be mobile.
Right. Yeah, that's so interesting. And that's so helpful for people that are listening. Like you said, you got get up and move around, do those stretches, take the call while you're walking. That's so important because we're just hunched over at our desks all day. I mean, I definitely feel that for sure. And so I really wanted to talk about, Natalie, the WonderRigor method that you started and this movement that's surrounding it. And I want to really leave people, the people listening today, I want to leave them with some actionable steps that they can start to take. Like you said, to get back to those basics, to get that imagination, curiosity flowing. So, and then really how that kind of comes into all parts of their life, like personal and professional.
Well, the WonderRigor method is a process I developed to help everyone understand that to be human is to be creative. It's part of our
Mm,
birthright as humans to be creative. It's not only artists or designers who are
right.
creative. Artists are exceptional at wrestling with the ambiguity of the creative process. They might get frustrated by it, but they kind of expect that that's going to happen. They understand the process is messy. And so the WonderRigor method essentially explains creativity in the following way. The
Hmm.
creativity is your ability to
Mm,
toggle between wonder and rigor to solve problems, discern meaning, and develop novel value. And we only get to that real creative flow when
mm,
we going back and forth between the wonder, which is about awe and audacity and curiosity, and rigor, which is about focus, skill mastery, time on task,
mm.
discipline. We need both of those. If we spend too much time for
Yes.
hitting the clouds,
Hmm.
we won't get any traction.
Right.
And if we spend too much time in the weeds, focused on the minutia,
Mm,
we'll become myopic and we'll lose the big picture. So
mm,
the WonderRigor method is a process that helps individuals and teams and organizations build this capacity for creativity and to
mm.
kind of be able to check themselves when they're erring too much on the side and wondering too much on the side of rigor. So in my first book, the Creativity Leap really outlines and lays that out. And there's a WonderRigor card game that I developed to help
Oh,
through question and prompts for people to do that. And you asked for a couple of practical things that people could do.
yeah.
I'll leave you with two. One is that people can begin to really engage proactively in question framing at the start of a meeting through something
Mm,
called question storming. So you have heard of brainstorming. What
yes.
question storming is, it's essentially ideating questions, not
Mm,
answers, not solutions, but questions. And it could take as short as 5 minutes, it could take an hour, right? It really depends
mm.
on how you structure it. But the point is that the prompt is, what's our next marketing strategy?
Okay.
Or what should we do for a holiday party? Whatever the
Mhm.
prompt is, instead of generating a series of answers and solutions, you're generating
Okay.
questions. So that's
Okay.
question building.
So what's an example of that one, Natalie? Can you give us an example of that one? So like generating questions, like for that question, can you give us an
Sure.
example?
So, what I would recommend is that you actually narrow the scope
Hmm.
for people and not just say, just think of some questions about our next
Right.
marketing strategy. You need to
Uh-huh.
be more specific and ask people to generate a series of questions quietly to themselves
Hmm.
for 6 seconds that are what if questions.
Hmm.
You'll be
Okay.
amazed at the questions that people begin to write down. And they shouldn't edit themselves, but they should just kind of do a brain dump on what if questions and think really expansively. And then
Mm.
to share it with a partner and then to share with the larger group. So that can be done virtually in a virtual meeting, that can be done in person. So that's an
Hmm.
example.
Okay, so like what if we pursue this opportunity, what will happen? Or what if we conquer fear? Or what if we get over our fear of
Yeah, you're doing
moving
it.
forward in this way?
Like you
Wow.
can't, I mean, I think one of the challenges
Hmm.
that has happened with AI, and we all
Right.
can succumb to this, is that we censor ourselves on like
Mm.
what the next thought is. Like, just
Right.
what if you fill in the blank? Like, what do you think? Like, it doesn't have to, it doesn't even have to be more than just starting. That's the starter. Where
Hmm.
would you take that, right? And
Right.
that has
Yes.
to be exercised. That has to be a muscle that you use regularly so that
Mm.
you don't censor yourself and say, well, I don't know what that. Sure, you do. What's the first thing that popped into your head? Okay, and then what's the next?
Mm.
And so giving people that prompt is a really helpful, practical thing to build the wonder of asking the bigger question, but also the rigor
Mm.
that comes with having a time limit, giving people a stretch goal. Try to think of 10 what if questions in this short amount of time.
Oh, that's interesting. I just wanted to add one more thing. And then one more thing is that I totally see what you mean, where I think instead of people question storming, like you said, or brainstorming, what they're doing is they want the perfect answer. So then they go to AI and they want the answer, they want the result. So now we're kind of getting away from that brainstorm, that question storming, where we're kind of getting together, we're like huddling together and we're throwing out all the ideas, whether or not you do them, whether or not they're good, whether or not you're going to pursue them. So we're kind of I see what you mean. We're losing that, that connection of that. And we're just going to, right, that productivity kind of like, I think that also comes into hustle culture too, where we just hustle culture, like we just want that, like, what's the word, that like toxic productivity, where it's like, I only need the response, I only need the solution, and kind of losing that process of it. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting. And then, so you were also mentioning about the other parts. So I love this. This is so interesting.
Well, no wonder and rigor are
Yes.
part of question storming. It's both
Yes. That's
wondrous and
amazing.
rigorous. And you don't
Right.
get to use your phone or
Yeah.
check into AI. It's just you
Right. Yeah.
and a Sharpie or you and a pencil and just jotting down and then having a conversation with people. So that's question storming. And then doodle sprints is
Hmm.
the second tactical thing I would recommend. Doodling has nothing to do with your ability to draw.
Yes.
If you can draw a circle, a triangle, an arrow, a line, a dot, a Venn diagram, you can
Hmm.
doodle. And it's more of a reflection of your capacity for abstract, complex
Hmm.
thinking. If you can explain something complex in really simple ways, then you actually understand it. You also are able to invite in questions. You're able to invite in clarifying questions and start conversation and get buy-in on an idea. So a doodle is actually a very low fidelity prototype. It's going to
Hmm.
be the scrappiest of prototypes. This the beginning of an idea.
Right.
Doodling in a short amount of time. Again, you could have whatever the prompt is,
Hmm.
whatever the challenge is, and ask people to generate two ideas around the challenge, only using doodles, only using
Hmm.
visuals, very scrappy, that they don't, there's nothing to do with being able to draw well or not.
Yes.
And then giving it
Yes.
a caption like you would a cartoon, a caption
Hmm.
kind of just briefly describes it.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. I was saying to myself recently, um, I'm on my computer all day. Like, I'm a big writer, like I like journaling, and I need to remind myself. I was like, I think I went 2 months without pen to paper, like a long, like
Mm.
not just like a to-do list, like actually writing something out. And I think we're getting away from that as well. And this is just another reason why this is so needed, Natalie. And then, okay, and then so these are really actionable steps that people
Yes.
can put into practice. Love
If
those.
you just started doing those
Right.
two,
That's
you
amazing.
would you would begin to shift the culture of
You
how
will.
you run a meeting. You'd begin to
You
shift
will.
how people show up at work. You begin to shift how you feel in your work day.
Yeah.
And I have, if you've read my books, then you know that they are very much prescriptive nonfiction. So every chapter in my books end with reflection questions and
Mm.
exercises for you, your team, your organization to try. So
Right.
lots and lots of examples and tips in there.
Oh yeah, this is amazing. This is amazing, Natalie. What I love, so the method that you've created, I don't think anyone else has taken wonder and rigor and put it together. I think that nobody else has put those two words together. And I like how you call it that state of flow. Again, kind of going back to psychology where we almost need a little bit of a challenge, but if something's too challenging, then we kind of divert from that. But we need something as well that, not just pure challenge. We also need something that keeps us interested, keeps us intrigued. And so I love how you put those together. I just
Thank
thought that was
you.
fascinating. And nobody else is talking about that. Kind of going into leadership, as you mentioned, and like how people can use this to lead better. People are saying the World Economic Forum has ranked creativity as the number 2 job skill that's like projected to be one of the leading job skills by next year, by 2027. I thought that was really interesting, and I wanted to kind of talk about that. Why people are saying, I think people think, oh, well, I need to network better. People think these things, which are all very important. Better. They need to work on the resume. They need to work on their interview skills. But I thought this was interesting about creativity specifically. I don't think people immediately say, well, that's a job. That's a coveted job skill.
Yeah, and increasingly
Yeah.
creativity will be a coveted job skill
Mm-hmm.
because while AI can help, AI is very good at mashups, right? And that's another way to think about creativity. It's about the
Right.
juxtaposition of ideas that we haven't formally put together. But humans can build on that even further because we have what I call a sentient intelligence. Our
Mm-hmm.
intelligence isn't just mental, it's not just cognitive. We get inputs through our senses, through our sense of smell and touch and feeling and our intuition. And so our creativity and our creative capacity
Right.
expands the more we are in the world. And that, coupled with whatever the speed is that AI and technology can give us, is magical. It's really phenomenal. But we have to do our part to make sure we're exercising the expansion of that human capacity. It's not surprising to me that creativity is now ranked as the number
Mm-hmm.
2 job skill by the World Economic Forum. It's up from number 3. And that came from the 2023 Future Job
Right.
Skills Report. Back in 2015, it was ranked as the number 10 job skill. And the
Mm-hmm.
number 1 job skill is still critical thinking. But creativity requires critical thinking. So I really
Does.
see that they are very integrative. So it
Right.
doesn't surprise me at all. And I think we absolutely will be seeing that. When you think about, so I just had to take my car into a car mechanic for repairs. And yes, there's a lot of technology that informs the work that an auto mechanic does,
Mm-hmm.
but there's so much creative problem solving that auto
Mm-hmm.
mechanics must do to combine the technology with their know-how, their intuiting, their experience of seeing things put together. Similarly, we can take that same sort of thinking that's required for the work of a CFO or a person who works in finance, for the work of people who work in agriculture. The ability to do those mashups, to go beyond what the algorithm gives you by going back into the world, being aware, being observant, and integrating those inputs. These are creative processes, and this is
Hmm.
key for the imagination era.
Yeah, and so many people in business, I mean, I've heard people before say, "Well, I'm not creative. I'm analytical. I'm I'm the analytical side, or like you said, the critical thinking side." But then they don't realize how that comes into creativity.
That's right.
And so that's so interesting. And there's something else I wanted to mention about that I find so interesting about creativity is it starts with putting yourself, asking those uncomfortable questions, putting yourself in places where maybe are not as comfortable for you, where you think, oh, okay, I'm not as comfortable doing that, but I'm going to try. I'm going to put myself out there. And I feel that you live this. You live this. I mean, as we know, speaking is one of the top fears. And you do ballroom dancing. You just have like such a joy about you. And I think that you're a living example of like when you put
Wow. Well,
creativity
thank
into
you.
practice. And what I find is like how this is not only in your work and your leadership, but also in your life. You're putting this into practice. So I think you're a fabulous example of how the personal and professional life kind of comes together.
Yes.
And like creativity is like the bridge, really.
It is, and for me, it's a lot of fun because I make sure that,
Mm-hmm.
as like to say, I'm a clumsy student of something in my life outside of work because it really informs the way I approach my work. It makes me braver to try new things. It makes me less inhibited to improvise and to experiment because I learned that the world does not come to a screeching halt because I make
Yes.
a mistake or I don't do
Right.
it
Right.
right the first 5 times.
Hmm.
There's joy in the process, and I'm always learning, and it prompts
Hmm.
the curiosity in my work. I mean, swimming, being new to open water, I'm not new to swimming, but I am new to open water swimming. I learned so much from
Hmm.
people who are much stronger swimmers than am I to be uh, more attuned to how I feel, to be attuned to my body, to be attuned to the natural environment. When you are swimming in the sea, you must be cognizant of you are cognizant of so many, you're cognizant of the way the sunlight is streaming through the water and the fish that are around you and the different shades of blue
Hmm.
and then the shifting current, which makes you need to fall back to your technique again, and you
Hmm.
have to be observant constantly and aware. And yet it's such a joyful, calming experience. So all of us can find something in our lives that helps to spark that joy and that
Right.
learning that we can bring into our work.
Right, that's amazing. And I think also I mentioned hustle culture, where it's almost a kind of a badge of honor to not take a break, to just keep going, to not rest. And I think that this is especially timely because I think that it's changing the narrative with that, and saying you do need to move, think, and rest. You do need to take that time for yourself. You do need to find things that spark joy. And so I want to fill in the blank together. Being creative is being, or being creative is.
Sparkly, inquisitive, open
Yes.
to new things.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And so I really want to end with my final question, Natalie, which I ask everyone. This podcast is, we center on hope and we try to leave people with some hope. I thought this was interesting. Actually, someone from a previous episode had said to me, hope is creativity. And so that's kind of sparked why I got so interested in this. But I really want to ask you, what role has hope played in your journey, and how do you hold on to that today?
Well, to me, hope is seeing possibility. And
Yes.
so being able to see possibility means sometimes we have to reframe. We
Mm-hmm.
have to switch our position, our angle at how we're looking at something. We have to ask for help. Sometimes it helps us to see the possibility in a new way. But hope
Right.
requires a connection. It requires curiosity, requires sitting with, not quite knowing what to do
Mm.
next, but being committed to possibility. So that to me is the most significant standpoint and perspective we
Mm-hmm.
need to hold on to. And for all of us to be able to exercise wonder and rigor and to tap into activities and
Mm-hmm.
collaborations and learning that helps us spark that wonder and rigor means that we will always be open to that possibility,
Mm-hmm.
that creative capacity building can always instill in us hope
Right.
about what's next and what's possible.
Right. I really love that. And you mentioned you worked in higher ed, which I had as well for a few years. And we talk a lot about well-being, of course, mental, emotional, physical well-being, but people are not talking about creative well-being, again, because there is so many misconceptions about what being creative means. And so when it comes to creative well-being, I love about possibilities and the reframe, where kind of bringing it back to the psychology of it. People think, well, I can't do that. I can't do that because maybe I don't think I'm going to be good at it. Instead of trying, instead of imagining what's possible. And so that's where I think of like creativity, the possibilities, even reframing those negative thoughts. Like maybe instead of saying, oh, I can't do this, or I don't see myself doing this, to let me try, let me see what's possible.
Exactly.
Let me put myself out there. And so I think that's really amazing. And it does come into hope. Being creative is very hopeful. And so I love how this kind of merges both of our worlds together. And so thank you so much, Natalie. This has been amazing. I know that everything that we're hearing when we talk about productivity, we talk about excessive burnout, AI, this even comes into everything. People leave with something inspiring today.
Great conversation. We touched a lot of different points, and
Yeah.
I thank you for having me on your show. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you so much. This has been awesome, Natalie. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening. Have a great rest of your day.